I want all of you to take a few seconds and think about innovators. How do you picture them? What do you do? What do they do? Where do they work? How many of you, show of hands, thought of apps, technology, Google, Apple Watch? How many of you thought about that as innovations? Great. A few years ago, if somebody had asked me the same question, I would have said that innovation is not possible unless you wear a white lab coat and you have a PhD at the back of your name. But then in 2005, I started working at Google, and I realized that you could innovate wearing shorts, wearing flip-flops, or playing pool in the office. Those were stimulating times. But even then, I hadn't uncovered the whole truth. The truth is, each and every one of us is an innovator. And it doesn't matter what you wear. Well, maybe, sometimes it does. When I was a kid, yay tall, I used to play tennis for my school back in India. So back in the 90s, if you're playing a sport that is not cricket in India, it is cruel. I don't know how many of you know, but cricket is a religious obsession. It's an obsession within the country. So each year, we had to approach corporate sponsors to get meager to substantial scholarships. And the cricketers always had the easiest pitch, always. It was a system that was so ingrained in us that we took it for granted. Until one of my fellow tennis players decided to innovate. He walked into a sponsorship meeting wearing a cricket jersey. And it wasn't well into his pitch that the sponsors realized he wasn't talking about cricket at all, and that tennis could hold their attention as well. That day, the tennis scholars walked away with a substantial scholarship. And I learned a lesson for life. Never take things for granted. If you think something needs to change, even if it's the color of your jersey, always challenge the status quo. A simple action can sow the seeds of change in the most hardened of people. Some of the greatest innovations and inventions, the steam engine, the mobile phone, Google, BuzzFeed. I mean, inherently, how would we know the value of lists if we didn't have BuzzFeed, right? So all of those inventions, when they first appeared, made such a startling impact on our life that we started associating innovation with new technology. Loud, publicized launches and long lines of people waiting to get a glimpse of the latest technology. I'm a self-professed geek, and I am guilty of these presumptions as well. But I think our definition of innovation has been warped. Innovation is the ripple of change that transforms society, the way it looks at itself and the way it looks at us. Fast forward to 2009, and I came face to face with innovation of another kind. And this one drove home a second point: the ability of innovation to transform lives. Before I go any further, let me take a few minutes to talk about my day job. I've just spent an all-nighter. Admittedly, not the best preparation before a TEDx speech, but my NUS friends would know the power of an all-nighter just before a big exam, right? So I just spent an all-nighter. It was 24 of the most inspiring hours of my life, as I saw millions of people around the world participate in Earth Hour 2016, which was on Saturday, March 19th. From Santiago to Singapore, from Nairobi to New Delhi, millions of people around the world came together and united for climate action. And to me, each and every one of those people is an innovator who's transforming the lives of their friends and family. When we started WWF's Earth Hour in 2007, we were looking for a voice that could speak to people who were completely ambivalent about climate change. Look, you had the 5% of people who cared deeply about it. You had the 5% of people who thought climate change was a hoax. But the tipping point was the 90% in the middle. Today, the Earth Hour voice spans over 178 countries and territories and over 7,000 cities. And it's been the power behind numerous environmental outcomes. And to think that it began with one simple gesture, one symbolic gesture, a simple light switch. It's staggering to imagine the power of symbolism to segue into real change. We've seen it time and time again. We saw it when the terror attacks happened in Paris. We saw it in the last couple of weeks, where thousands of people donated their Facebook feeds and changed their profile picture on Facebook and Twitter and showed support for climate action for Earth Hour. Not because switching off the light or changing your profile picture takes much innovation, but it's because they share the vision that together we can change climate change. By doing so, by switching off a light, by changing your profile picture, together we collectively believe that we can create a future that's going to make the world a better place, not just for our generation, but for our children and their children. If societies are at a tipping point, symbolism is the critical first step that people need to take to get into real change. It builds up the intrigue, and it actually tips people over into taking concrete action. I have a quote that I hold very dearly, and I want you all to just, participate with me on that. The American philosopher Dr. Wayne Dyer once said, "If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change." Today, each and every one of you has the power to look at yourself and your ability to innovate. What would you change? Think about this. Until a few years ago, Uganda was losing thousands of hectares to deforestation every year. Plastic was threatening the unique ecosystem of the UNESCO World Heritage Site of the Galapagos Islands. And companies were extracting and transporting hydrocarbons off the coast of Russia with impunity. Today, Uganda is home to the first Earth Hour forest, 2,700 hectares of vibrant living spaces. Plastic is completely banned from the Galapagos landscape. And the Russian seas are protected by robust laws to prevent pollution. And all of this, each and every one of these, was possible because ordinary individuals like you and I, decided that it was time for a change, a time to change climate change. Sure, when you think about climate change, sometimes the number, it can be too daunting. The facts are too big. I'm one person. What can I do? How many of you actually feel that? Show of hands. Right? It's absolutely natural to actually feel that. I'm one person. What can I do? Each year is there's a new hottest year on record. And each new climate disaster spells a new reality for hundreds and thousands of people. But it's exactly at times like this, that we need to realize that people need to be at the center of every climate change conversation. And if we have the ability to innovate and transform lives, that is what will ultimately solve climate change as a problem. Whether it is using solar energy to feed off-grid communities in India and the Philippines, whether it's using digital petitions and digital crowdsourcing to show the impacts of climate change on your surroundings and your neighborhoods, or even if it's just using your Facebook timeline to shine a light on climate action and spurring your friends to do so. All of that, to me, is a very understated but an absolutely important kind of innovation. And that is available to everybody sitting in this room and everybody in the world. I'm a big movie buff, and a few of my favorite movies in the past have been Mad Max Fury Road and Interstellar. I love those movies only because when they portray the future, the imagination knows no bounds. But more than that, it's our ability to write that future that needs to be visionary and fearless. Let us write one that's filled with hope and transformation. Something that actually transforms all of our lives and the lives of people we're with. And I feel that the momentum is in our favor. In 1992, when we had the world's first Earth Summit in Rio, very, very few companies attended that. And there were even fewer civil society organizations as part of that conference. Fast forward to 2015, where over 195 countries met at the COP21 Climate Summit in Paris and signed the world's first universally agreed climate deal. Many publications called it a tipping point for the planet. But for me, the tipping point extended beyond the walls of a conference room in Paris. To me, it was the role that people played as part of the success of Paris. People were connecting using technology to policymakers and politicians in an unprecedented way. So times have changed from Rio to Paris, but the need for climate action remains the same, if not more. Our grandparents and parents always challenged the status quo. They may not have had the HD TVs or the iPhone 6s, but they were the first to realize that symbolism is a vital tipping point for things which began as early as the civil rights movement, to gender inequality, to universal right to vote. They also realized that they had to innovate to a place where society transforms itself and moves forward. Let us not fail that vision, or nor fail the vision of generations to come. I'd like each and every one of you to be the most fearless innovator you can be, and trust the fact that the power of the people can be the wind beneath your wings. On that really strange Bette Midler reference, which nobody in the NUS crowd got, but a few of the professors actually nod in agreement, I'd like to thank you for listening to me. And I wish you nothing but success in everything you aspire to do. Thank you.